What's going on, guys? I'm Abby Martin, and this is Breaking the Set. So you've probably heard by now that Bloomberg's anti-sugary drink crusade has been shot down just a day before it was supposed to take effect. New York State judge who ruled against it called it arbitrary and capricious, saying that the law would not only violate the separation of powers doctrine, it would eviscerate it. Such an evisceration has the potential to be more troubling than sugar-sweetened beverages, she says. Finally, someone gets it. But as happy as I am to hear this ridiculous venture will not proceed, I'm equally disturbed to find out some other related news. You see, lawmakers in Mississippi have recently taken the initiative to make absolutely certain their own local officials don't try to implement a similar initiative. So they've actually voted through a bill that would prevent any Mississippi county from passing laws to address obesity. It's called the Anti-Bloomberg Bill, and it would bar cities from enacting rules requiring calorie counts to be posted or portion sizes to be capped. Here's the irony. Mississippi actually does have a serious obesity epidemic, holding the title as the fattest state in the country. In fact, about 1 in 3 adults there is at least 30 pounds heavier than a healthy weight. It's insane to me to watch one extreme state measure to the next. So let's go break that set.
I want you to watch what we're about to do because you've never seen anything like this on television.
This year marks half a century since the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And to this day, his death remains one of the most contentious accounts in an official government narrative. A 2003 Gallup poll found that 75% of Americans think that Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone. In fact, JFK's nephew, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has just come out and said that he's convinced that we're not being told the truth, asserting that the Warren Commission was a shoddy piece of craftsmanship. After decades of speculation, it's a topic that director Oliver Stone boldly took on in his debut expose entitled JFK, which some call the most comprehensive account of the events surrounding his death. Take a look.
If I answer that question you keep asking, if I give you the name of the big enchilada, you know, then it's Bon Voyage Dino. I mean like permanent. I mean like a bullet in my head, you dig? Does that help you see my problem a little better?
Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flash of light in the bushes, and then shots rang out.
No cloak and dagger stuff, you know. They call it Operation Mongoose.
It's gonna be okay, Dave. You just talk to us on the record and we'll protect you. I guarantee it.
You're so naive.
Well, I got the chance to speak to Oliver Stone himself about the film, where he explained why it's so hard to discern what really happened that day. Listen for yourself.
These are my conclusions based on a huge amount of research, but we cannot ever prove anything in that movie practically, because there's been so much blurring of the facts, so much disappearance, the autopsy among them, the bullets, the concept of fingerprints, all the chain of evidence was lost. Oswald's interrogation was lost.
Unfortunately, more than 50,000 pages of JFK-related classified documents are being withheld, despite a FOIA request for the release of this information for the 50th anniversary of his death this year. But people are still demanding the truth. In fact, the National Archives and Records Administration just asked for suggestions on a public forum about what it could do to create greater transparency. And lo and behold, the most popular response was to get the Kennedy records out. So, here to talk about what these records could reveal and whether their holdup is more strategic than we all think, I'm joined now by Russ Baker, editor of whowhatwhy.org and author of Family of Secrets. Thank you so much for coming on, Russ.
My pleasure.
So you've been investigating this issue for a very long time. Let's talk first about the documents. These 50,000 pages that are not being released, it's only 1% according to the establishment. So if we already have the other 99%, what could this 1% really reveal to us?
Well, it could reveal a great deal. In fact, the question would be, since the government's official position has always been that it was just Lee Harvey Oswald and there was nothing more to the story, why would anything be withheld that relates to the Kennedy assassination. And, you know, they use numbers. We don't know that we can trust them, but they say 5 million documents. Most of them have been released. They've only held back 1%. Well, that's 50,000. You do wonder what are in those 50,000 documents.
Right. I mean, that's a good question. If they have nothing to hide, why are they refusing to release information? Why are they hiding a really important aspect of this investigation? Let's go over some of the biggest anomalies for people who haven't really researched it, who maybe haven't seen JFK or know really that much. That contradict the official story. First, why is the bullet called this magic bullet? I mean, why do people refer to it that way?
Well, basically, I mean, that's a very complex technical issue, but in essence, what happened was the Warren Commission was under pressure to agree with a story that had already been leaked by J. Edgar Hoover, that they had already concluded within basically hours that Oswald had done it alone, that there was nothing else for them to do, and so they had to conform to that. So they had to go through great gymnastics in order to make it possible for this one man to have fired those crucial shots that caused a number of different injuries, bullet holes, and so forth.
So one bullet caused a bunch of different exit wounds, and it doesn't really make sense. The grassy knoll, why is it speculated that a fourth shot actually took place and not from the book depository?
Well, there are really many different accounts suggesting some sort of triangulation, multiple shooters. Obviously, if the people who are professionally trained in conducting coups understand you only have one chance to do it, and you need to do it right. And what you would do is you'd have people in the back and you'd have people in the fore, and that is what most of the indications are, that there were several shooters.
And wasn't there a government agency that actually conducted an independent investigation and listened to the tapes from that day and actually concluded that there was a fourth shot?
Right, Abby. This is very, very interesting. The House in the 1970s, a decade after the Kennedy assassination, conducted extensive inquiries. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, in its final report, actually concluded a probable conspiracy in Kennedy's death.
Unbelievable. The man with the umbrella, this is something that I didn't even know about until today. Really fascinating that a person would be standing out in the sunlight dressed in all black, holding an open umbrella. What is the significance of this?
We just did a story on that recently on Hawaii. What we were interested in was that there was a man who was furiously pumping an umbrella at the exact moment that the shots rang out on a sunny day right next to Kennedy's car. We noticed how the mainstream media, particularly New York Times, had sort of poo-pooed that and said that it was just a man with some crazy theory and he was trying to signal Kennedy. That seemed improbable. And so what we think is it was any of a number of things. What that was, whether he was a distraction or he was signaling to shooters, the likelihood, and I think any serious crime investigator would want to look a lot harder at him.
Yeah, very interesting aspect of the story. Another is, it's alleged that Oswald was connected to the CIA, even a double agent, thus making him almost the perfect patsy. Is there any evidence to back this up?
There actually is a lot of evidence. Recently someone asked me, well, what are a few things that can sort of suggest that there was in fact a conspiracy? And my point would be, what are a few things that don't suggest that? It's kind of like you're standing in the forest and so you don't even realize you're surrounded by trees. Over the last 50 years, there have been hundreds of books. My book, Family of Secrets, is one of many that all bring up different documented information, strongly suggesting that we're looking at something much more serious here.
And I always ask in these situations, cui bono? Who benefits? Who would benefit the most from Kennedy's death?
Well, one of the things that I think the mainstream media has been doing all of these years is trying to convince us that John F. Kennedy was in some ways not that significant a figure. There was no reason to take him out. The more I study him, the more I realize he was probably the most radical president, but perhaps at least in that century and perhaps in American history. He and his brother Robert were pursuing a broad range of initiatives that were angering particularly corporations and wealthy individuals, everything from oil companies to foreign resource extraction companies to organized crime to people in major centers in the government, in the military, in the CIA. They basically were taking on everybody.
And I think when people look at that and they look at him kind of targeting organized crime, the mafia, and they say, well, the mafia took him out. But could the mafia have gone to the extent of the cover-up of his death without government involvement?
Absolutely not. I do think that this was a very layered operation. I'm continuing to investigate it, and I think what we're looking at is something that was years in the planning. There were so many different people brought in, particularly for the purpose that people could point their fingers. But again, I think the mob was being utilized by much more calculating people who had the capability, as you point out, to also orchestrate a cover-up involving the autopsy and, of course, the Warren Commission and everything that came after.
Right, which was appointed by Johnson, his, the vice president at the time, who then became president. Based on all the information available, I know that there's been multiple independent investigations that have come. You've been doing your own. What is the conclusion?
I think the conclusion is that the same people in this country who think it's okay to assassinate or otherwise remove elected leaders don't feel that way only when it comes to other countries. It's just that if you're going to do it in this country, you have to be much more careful. You have to be absolutely sure that you control the whole environment. Controlling the media is the key to all of it, because if you control the media, you control the minds. I think Jim Morrison said that. And if you do that, basically, you really don't have any kind of problem. Somebody once said to me that the most important agency in the government was the Department of Justice, because as long as your friends are in there and they're not going to come after you, you're okay. Everything you do is legal.
Indeed, the media manipulation is a huge aspect of this. Of course, the overwhelming majority of Americans don't believe the official story, yet anyone who questions it is labeled fringe, a conspiracy theorist, even the disinformation campaign going on about the people who want these documents to be released. But first, if this is the case, that there was this criminal cabal behind the assassination, did they get phased out, or do they still exist in the form of a military-industrial complex? I mean, where did they go?
I think all you have to do is look at the fact that we have so few choices in this country, that ever since John F. Kennedy, the range of options that have been presented to us are all very, very narrow. You see that in the presidential debates. There really is no general broad disagreement about, for example, pursuing foreign wars, about what the United States interests actually are. And I think that the message has been made clear that real dissent will not be tolerated.
And how is it that so many people can disagree with this official narrative, yet kind of be dismissed still to this day as just fringe?
I think this gets back to controlling the dominant narrative in this country. It gets back to the ownership of the media, the ownership of textbook companies, the major donors to large universities and so forth. As long as you control the purse strings, you control virtually everything.
And, you know, last but not least, what do we do about these documents? I mean, Obama's trying to hold them indefinitely. It's already coming up on the 50 years. They can't possibly impede national security. I mean, we're talking about an event that occurred very long time ago. What is the official position that they're holding of why they don't want to release them, and what do we do to really get them released? They don't really provide an answer. Originally, someone from the National Archives said that everything should have been released by November 2013, the 50th anniversary. He retired, and then the National Archives here in Washington began saying that, no, this is not going to be released until 2017. But there's actually a clause allowing places like the CIA to indefinitely delay all of this. So I think it really would come down to the people who supported Barack Obama and believe that he's a good man and that he stands for openness to pressure him for the release. But I think the reality also is that he himself, I think, has some trepidation, some awareness that he can't quite open up that Pandora's box. It is certainly Pandora's box. You explore it in a couple chapters in your book, Family of Secrets. Russ Baker, whowhatwhy.org. Thank you so much. Thank you. If you like what you see so far, go to Twitter. Check out what I'm doing when I'm not on air and follow me there. I'm at Abby Martin. You can find all my tweets linking to segments from the show, as well as just random thoughts I have throughout the day. And also, please help us get Breaking a Set trending on the Twitter sphere. I can't even speak. Occasionally I'll throw out some hashtags we can get trending, but only with your help. So head to twitter.com and check me out at Abby Martin. And for now, I'll let you take a break from my preaching, but stay tuned to hear how the sequester cuts will affect the payout of the 9/11 first responder heroes next.